When was the last time you felt truly alive, not just existing, but alive? Not buried in routines or overwhelmed by noise, but fully connected to who you are? If that question feels hard to answer, you're not alone. Most people don't realize they've drifted away from themselves until life feels hollow, until the fire goes out, until the days blur into each other and everything starts to feel like just getting by. Maybe that's where you are right now. Not broken, not defeated, just disconnected. You didn't mean to forget who you are. It wasn't a conscious choice. It happened slowly, almost invisibly. Life piled up. Responsibilities took over. People expected things from you. So you adapted. You kept your head down. You kept moving. And little by little, the version of you that once dreamed big, that once believed in more, started fading. At first, it was just silence, then doubt, then a quiet voice that said, maybe this is all there is. But deep down, you know that's not true. You were born with potential that can't be measured. You were built for more than comfort and compromise. More than endless routines that drain your energy. More than being fine while silently wondering why you're not fulfilled. That sense of restlessness you feel, that tiny flicker of frustration that you try to ignore, that's not weakness. That's your soul trying to wake you up. It's the real you whispering, there's more. Don't settle. You didn't lose your fire. You just forgot how it felt to burn. You didn't lose your voice. You just stopped using it. The world taught you to shrink, to dim your light so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. But you were never meant to be invisible. You were meant to stand in your truth, even if your hands shake. You were meant to take up space, even if your voice cracks. You were meant to live a life that means something, not just to others, but to you. This isn't about being perfect or having everything figured out. It's about remembering who you were before the fear, before the doubt, before life convinced you to settle. And if part of you is still listening, still hoping, still feeling something as these words hit, then you haven't lost yourself. You've just been waiting for permission. But here's the truth, you don't need permission to come back home to yourself. Stay with me, because what comes next isn't about hype or motivation that fades by morning. It's about awakening, reconnection, reclaiming. The version of you that once believed in more is still alive. And by the end of this video, you're going to remember how to find them, because the pain of forgetting who you are is nothing compared to the power of remembering. This is your wake-up call, and it's not too late. Not now. Not ever. The reason so many people stay stuck isn't because they're weak. It's because they've made comfort their home. Not joy, not purpose, just comfort. And comfort doesn't feel bad enough to leave, but it never feels good enough to stay. It's a trap that looks like safety, but slowly steals your passion. You wake up each day doing what you're supposed to do, going through the motions, telling yourself it's fine. But deep inside, you know it's not fine. It's flat, it's empty. And the worst part, you start convincing yourself that maybe this is just how life is supposed to feel. You were not built to survive in neutral. You were designed for movement, for challenge, for growth. That's why you feel so unfulfilled, because your life is out of alignment with your nature. Growth is uncomfortable, but stagnation is suffocating. And you can't outrun that truth, no matter how busy you keep yourself. You can distract yourself for a while. You can numb the discomfort with habits, routines, even temporary success. But the feeling always returns, the knowing that something more is possible, that your life isn't supposed to look like a checklist of obligations and quiet regrets. The mind wants safety, but the soul wants expansion. And the space between those two is where most people get lost. You feel pulled in two directions, toward the comfort that's familiar and the growth that's terrifying. That tension you feel, that's not weakness. That's the beginning of change. That's the part of you that refuses to die quietly. That's your higher self calling you forward, begging you to stop settling, to stop hiding, to stop pretending you don't care when you do. And yes, change feels scary. That's because you're stepping into something unknown. But if you let fear make your choices, your life will always belong to it. You'll stay where it's predictable, where it's manageable, never fully breaking, but never fully living either. You were built for more than that. Not more noise, not more pressure. More is meaning, more truth, more is you. You're not waiting for the perfect moment. That's a myth. The perfect moment doesn't come. You create it by deciding that enough is enough. That living small isn't safety. It's slow self-abandonment. And if you feel that lump in your throat right now, that heaviness in your chest, that's your soul stirring. That's your heart remembering who you were before you gave yourself away to fear. You don't need to know every step ahead. You only need to say yes to the next one, because that's how momentum begins. And once you take that step, the energy shifts. Your confidence starts to rebuild. Your fire begins to return. And with every step, you start to remember you were never meant to be caged by comfort. You were meant to rise. You were meant to stretch. You were meant to become. Not tomorrow, not someday, By now, you've been living in a version of yourself that's smaller than the truth. You've accepted roles, labels, and limitations that were never yours to carry. Somewhere along the way, you started believing that your value was tied to how well you fit in, how quiet you stayed, how little you asked for. But none of that is who you are. You were never meant to be invisible. You were never meant to play a part that keeps you distant from your own soul. The real you, beneath the noise, beneath the fear, is powerful beyond what you've allowed yourself to believe. You haven't run out of time. You haven't missed your moment. You haven't failed just because you forgot your strength. You're here now, breathing, listening, and that means something inside you still remembers. That spark, no matter how small, is enough, because identity isn't fixed, it's built, rebuilt, reinforced with every choice you make. The voice that tells you you're stuck is lying. You're not stuck, you're just unpracticed at being fully you. But that can change, starting the moment you stop trying to be who the world expects and start reclaiming who you already are. There is a power in you that life hasn't erased. Not time, not pain, not failure. It's still there, beneath every scar. And the moment you stop looking outside yourself for validation, you'll feel it again. Because you don't need to become someone else. You don't need to wait to be chosen. You don't need to ask for permission to stand tall in your own truth. You just need to remember who you were before fear took the lead. Who you were before you let disappointment convince you to shrink. That version of you, the real you, is still alive. They never left, they just got quiet, buried under years of noise, self-doubt, and the pressure to be something less than extraordinary. But you can bring them back, not through perfection, but through presence. Through the decision to show up fully, even if your voice trembles, even if your hands shake. Because each time you act in alignment with your truth, you become more of who you were always meant to be. You don't rise by waiting for confidence. You rise by deciding to move anyway. And as you move, you remember. You remember what it feels like to trust yourself, to speak with conviction, to breathe without apology, to exist without needing to shrink. This is how identity is reclaimed, not in massive leaps, but in consistent, courageous choices. You were not built to disappear into a life of doubt and quiet disappointment. You were built to rise, to lead yourself out, to return to the center of your own life. Every breath you take in alignment with who you are is a rebellion against everything that ever told you to settle. This is not the end of your story. This is where you turn the page and write the truth. You don't need to fix yourself. You need to face yourself. The version of you that's been hiding, waiting, shrinking, that's not the full story. It's a moment, a chapter, but not the whole of who you are. Every excuse you've made, every delay, every time you've said, maybe later, or I'm not ready, they're all forms of self-protection. And they made sense once. Maybe they kept you safe. Maybe they helped you survive. But survival is not the goal anymore. You're not here to survive, you're here to live. Fully, boldly, unapologetically. Reclaiming yourself isn't easy. It means letting go of old narratives. It means questioning the voice in your head that says you're not enough. It means walking away from the familiar, even when the familiar feels safe. But safety without growth is a slow kind of death. It's the quiet erosion of your fire. And you didn't come this far to go numb. You came to feel again, to fight again, to rise. The mind is powerful, but it doesn't always tell the truth. It repeats what it's been fed, the doubts, the limits, the fears. And the more you repeat them, the more they feel like reality. But repetition is not truth. Just because you've believed something for a long time doesn't mean it belongs to you. You have the ability to interrupt those patterns, to challenge every thought that tries to pull you backward, to stand in front of the mirror and say, I refuse to keep living as a version of myself I don't even recognize. This is what change demands, not perfection, but honesty, not massive transformation overnight, but courageous ownership of your next decision. It's in the small moments, the quiet choices, the instant you say no to fear and yes to alignment. That's when your identity begins to shift. That's when your life begins to catch up to your potential. You're not stuck. You're standing at the threshold of something greater, and fear is the gatekeeper. But fear has no real power unless you feed it, and you've fed it long enough. It's time to choose differently, not later. Now, because nothing changes without a decision. And the moment you decide to stop abandoning yourself, everything around you starts to move. You don't need to be fearless. You need to be willing to show up, willing to try, willing to take ownership of your future, because no one is coming to rescue you. But you were never meant to be rescued. You were meant to remember your own strength. You were meant to look fear in the eye and move anyway. This is the fight that matters, the one between who you've been and who you're becoming. And every step you take toward truth, toward growth, toward alignment is a declaration, a signal, a roar that you are no longer available for a life that leaves your soul starving. You were built for more. And it starts the moment you decide to rise, There comes a point when you have to stop waiting for clarity and start creating it. You can't wait for the fear to go away. You can't wait to feel ready. You can't wait for everything around you to change before you decide to become who you were always meant to be. You become that person by making choices that align with your truth, even when the world around you doesn't understand it. Even when your own mind tries to pull you back into comfort, into the familiar, into the patterns that kept you small. You break those patterns by acting against them. Everything you want exists on the other side of discomfort, the growth, the freedom, the identity you've been chasing. It all lives just beyond the point where most people give up. But that doesn't have to be your story. You can keep going. You can choose differently. Because every time you do the thing you said you couldn't, every time you refuse to believe the lie that you're not enough, you build something unshakable inside you. You're not just building a life, you're building you. Stronger, clearer, real. You reclaim your power by choosing action over excuses, by recognizing that you don't need a miracle, you need momentum. And momentum is built, not found. It starts with one decision, one small, courageous act. That's how you shift your identity, not by dreaming about who you could be, but by proving it through what you do. Every time you follow through, you send a message to your mind. I'm not who I used to be, and your mind begins to believe it. That's how transformation begins. This is the turning point. The part where you stop negotiating with your limits. The part where you stop watering down your desires to make other people comfortable. The part where you stop settling for a life that doesn't feel like a you. You don't need anyone's permission to change. You don't need anyone's approval to grow. You just need to decide that you're done waiting, that you're done explaining, that you're done living beneath your potential just to avoid discomfort. Every fear you face, every habit you break, every truth you speak out loud, these are the moments that shape your return, not to some ideal perfect version of yourself, but to the most honest one, the most aligned, the most alive. That version of you doesn't live in the future. They live in the next decision you make, and you can make that decision now, to stop running from your reflection, to stop editing yourself down to fit a version of life that never belonged to you, to finally step into what was always waiting for you on the other side of hesitation. Because once you begin, once you truly begin, you'll wonder why you ever waited. You'll feel your fire return. You'll feel yourself come alive. And you'll realize you were never lost. You were just preparing to remember. This is your moment, not tomorrow, not when everything makes sense. Now, the life you crave isn't found in more time. It's found in more truth. You don't need more plans, you need more courage. The courage to stop waiting for someone else to hand you permission. The courage to feel the fear and move anyway. The courage to admit that you want more, that you are more, that you've always been more, even on the days you forgot. Even on the days you hid from your own potential because it felt too heavy to carry. But it's not too heavy, it's yours. There is a fire inside you that has been asking to rise. You've been dimming it, distracting it, trying to control it, but you were never meant to hold it back. You were meant to burn, not destructively, powerfully, on purpose, with direction, with vision, with clarity that comes from within, not from what others think, not from what the world expects, but from what your soul knows, and your soul has always known. That's why you're still listening. That's why something deep inside you won't settle. That's not noise. That's alignment. You don't owe anyone the version of you that made them comfortable. You don't need to keep showing up as someone that no longer feels real just to avoid rejection or discomfort. That is not growth. That is self-abandonment. And every time you shrink to keep the peace outside of you, you create war inside of you. But that war can end right now. With one decision to stop living beneath your own standard, to stop pretending you don't care when your whole being is begging you to rise. This is the invitation, to step into the version of yourself that no longer begs for scraps of meaning, the version that no longer avoids mirrors because they reflect someone you don't recognize, the version that no longer chases validation to feel worthy. You don't need to chase what you can choose. You can choose to rise. You can choose to rebuild. You can choose to speak your truth out loud, even if your voice shakes. You can choose to show up like your future depends on it, because it does. The life you want doesn't begin when everything is perfect. It begins the moment you stop waiting, the moment you stop negotiating with your fear, the moment you stop explaining your dreams to people who were never meant to understand them. You don't need them to understand. You only need Jayu to believe. Because once you believe, the world has no choice but to catch up. This is where it turns, where the story changes, where you stop playing small and start standing tall. Not because it's easy, but because it's time. You've waited long enough, you've hidden long enough. And now, every breath you take is a declaration you remember who you are. You were built for more, and you will never forget it again.